Hi, welcome you all to this special class on Unacademy YouTube platform. Unlock. Today, as part of our special class, we will be discussing, continuing with our discussions of Indian economy, agriculture, and then we will also proceed to industry. Right? Check it is on or not. Right. Yeah. So let us proceed and look at the topics that we will be discussing today. Before looking at the topics that we will be discussing today, let us look at the courses offered on an academic platform. As you can see on the screen here, Unacademy is the largest learning platform in India. You can get plus subscriptions and access unlimited live and recorded courses from India's best educators, right? And for these India's best educators, you can see the names here, right? Can I see my name here? It must be there somewhere else, right? No problem, right? So then all of them are India's best educators for civil services examination. Today we will be discussing the topic, as I said, Indian economy, and we will be continuing with our discussion of agriculture and industry. You have a Telegram channel also, or and also this Unacademy community also, which you can see that one. You can achieve your exam goal with 20% off on all the subscriptions. This is very important. From 25th April to 28th April, so you can get 20% discussion on all subscriptions. Yes, Nilesh, that is true. So subscribe now, and you can use our code PKS10. You can use our code PKS10 to get a subscription, right? Then you have this UPSC CSE Prelims practice booklets, 10,000 plus questions, which is more than sufficient for the next 100 years of UPSC examination, right? Every year they are asking 100 questions. So for the next 100 years of examination, these questions will be more than sufficient for you, 10,000 questions. You can safely prepare for UPSC prelims for the next 100 years with these 10,000 questions. And you have 10 printed practice booklets also worth 7,500 rupees. And you also have on top of it previous year questions. This offer is valid up to 30th of April for both Iconic and Plus subscriptions. So hurry and take those subscriptions, right? You will be getting all this additional study material also. Then proceeding further, you have this UPSC CSE Combat, which will be held on 1st of May 2022 at 11 a.m. In 60 minutes, you have to answer 56 questions, and you can win rewards up to 4 crores. Questions are curated by the top educators of Unacademy. You have real-time ranking also to check your performance. You can get admission into these courses using our code PKS10. Between first and third ranks, they'll get 90% scholarship. Between fourth and 10th rank, they'll get 79% scholarships. between 11 and 58th they'll get 50% scholarships, and from 51 to 500 they'll get 25% scholarships. A very good offer for you. And then interview program which is going on right now. Last year more than 170 toppers were selected for this from this interview guidance program, what is called the last mile. And what are the benefits of this iconic subscription? You will get personal coach and live mentorship, and you will also have mains question and answer practice, study planner, and open house with educators. And these are the fee of Unacademy. You can see those things. You can contact the number 858585 and 8585 to get all the details. This is the fee for plus subscription and iconic subscription. You can pay monthly also in every month in 2569, which is very less. And for 36 months and 24 months also, and you'll get a 10% discount also on those things by quoting our code PKS10. And you can also get loans with 0% EMI. The loan will be approved in maximum 2 hours time with minimal paperwork. Right? So this is what it is. Now let us come back and look at what we were discussing yesterday. Yesterday I think we were discussing about agriculture, and we stopped in the middle. Let us proceed and look at where we have stopped. Let us proceed with agriculture before going to industry part, right? So you can see here, yesterday we were talking about minimum support prices and food security and distribution. As we said, another issue with the agriculture sector is that agriculture is important not only from the point of view of farmers, it is also important from the point of view of providing food security. As all of us know, in early 1960s, India faced a severe food crisis, and we were forced to import food grains from America under PL 480 agreement. And for a brief period of time, there was this fear that Robert Malthus' theory of population could be applied to India also, because of the kind of scarcity that we have witnessed. In order to overcome that scarcity again of food grains again, we have implemented this Green Revolution. Thanks to Green Revolution, India has become a food security country. Now, as part of food security and distribution, what we are talking about right now is that we want to go beyond this food security in terms of rice or wheat. We wanted to ensure that this food security in terms of other items in the food basket also, like pulses, grains, then milk, vegetables, fruits, and everything else. That is what we wanted to do. We wanted to go beyond those things. And of course, the public distribution system. Our public distribution system has faced severe criticism because of the corruption in PDS. But in spite of all those criticisms, what we have seen is that during this corona crisis of 2 years, we have successfully distributed free food grains to more than around 80 crore population, which has helped them to overcome the crisis that was created due to corona. And this was praised by even IMF also. In spite of all these things, what we say is that still the country is facing a lot more the country is facing a lot more crisis in terms of PDS system, as pointed out by this Shanta Kumar committee on public distribution system. There are so many problems, and most importantly, the cost of procuring food grains and storing them, which is being done by Food Corporation of India. It is imposing huge amount of burden on the exchequer, running into almost 4 lakh crores of rupees, which is a huge amount of money. And that is the reason why it has been suggested that we can move slowly towards what we call cash transfers. Let the money be transferred into the accounts of the people, or we can have food stamps also, wherein there will be decentralized procurement and decentralized storage of food grains. We can invite the private sector also to invest in what we call to invest in food storage also. These are all some of the solutions that have been provided. These are some of the solutions that have been provided to overcome these problems related to food distribution. Shanta Kumar committee had come out with all these solutions. It has said that ultimately, we have to move towards this direct beneficiary transfers, which can help us in reducing the cost of storing food grains, procuring food grains, and distributing them also. When we have this decentralized procurement and distribution system. And please remember, last year the same question was asked in your Indian Economy paper 3 for 15 marks. Reforms in the PDS system, right? And it has also been suggested that we can extend this PDS to other items in the food basket also. Then then we have this Essential Commodities Act also. One of the important components of the food this farm reform farm bills was regarding the Essential Commodities Act, and it has been suggested that this Essential Commodities Act has resulted in hoarding of food grains, creating artificial scarcity, so on and so forth. It is also not allowing the industrial sector to invest heavily in the agriculture sector. And what is the problem here? Now we have to understand the problem here. The problem here is that in case of industry and service sector, the prices are fixed by the producers on the basis of demand and supply. On the basis of demand and supply. Why? Because they are non-essential goods and services. Whereas in case of agriculture, the farmer is not allowed to fix the prices. It is the government that would fix the prices of the food grains. It is the government that would fix, that would control the price of food grains. I'll just give you one example here. Take the case of, this onions. If you look at onions, what is the problem here? When the prices of onions go up, ideally farmers should feel happy. When the prices of onions go up, these farmers should feel happy because they are getting profits. And what will the government do immediately? What will the government do immediately? The government will immediately, invoke this Essential Commodities Act, and the government would not allow hoarding of these onions. And because of this, what happens ultimately? The farmers would not be able to get any benefit of increase in the prices also. Why? Because for all other commodities, it is the producers who have the comfort to decide the prices on the basis of demand and supply. Whereas in case of food grains, the government cannot allow the prices of food grains to go beyond a certain point. If they go beyond a certain point, it is the consumers who suffer. As we say, food inflation is the most worrisome aspect for any government. In 1979, Janata Party was in power. The inflation was very, very high. 1980 elections were held. And at that point of time, in 1979, Janata Party has failed to control the prices of onions. The price of onions in those days itself have reached very high levels. 79 means you can imagine 43 years back. And what happened? Normally, when we cut onions, we will have tears in our eyes. When Janata Party people heard about onions, they had tears. They could never come back to power again. That is the power of food inflation. Again, in 1998, the BJP was in power in Delhi. Sushma Swaraj was the finance minister, for the chief minister of Delhi. Again, at that point of time, the prices of onions have reached 100 rupees per kilo in Delhi. Elections were held to Delhi State Assembly. We are in 2022. In the last 24 years, we have not seen BJP coming back to power in Delhi. Again, that is the price of onions and the power of onions. That is the reason why we say that the government has to control the prices of food items. No government has survived. No government has survived. No government has come back to power. No government has survived, and no government had come back to power without controlling food grain prices. The most important thing for the government is controlling the food grain prices. Now, what is the problem here? As I said, what is the problem here? The problem here is that how to balance the interests of producers and consumers. That is where it becomes difficult for the government. That is where it becomes difficult for the government. How to balance the interest of producers and consumers. That is the reason why the government comes up with the minimum support price, and on the other hand, the government also provides subsidies to the consumers. In this way, what happens is that the subsidies bill of the government is also going up. But the government is providing food subsidies for rice and wheat, not all other items. Whereas vegetables, fruits and other dairy products are also essential for our day-to-day consumption. That is the reason why the government had come out with this Essential Commodities Act, wherein it cannot allow the prices to go beyond a certain point. If the prices of, say, onions go up, what will the government do? Immediately the government will import onions from the foreign countries, and they will make sure that prices would come down. Ultimately, what it does is that it will not be providing any kind of incentives for large scale production of these commodities by the farmers, because they are not allowed to have free decisions, free power in determining the prices. And this is also resulting in less corporatization of our agriculture sector. And what is the solution? The solution is something is that food processing only. Food processing, because nowadays you can see this food processing industry has become one of the sunrise industries also in our country. So these are all the issues in the agriculture sector. As we proceed, we'll come out with all the solutions also. Let us look at the solutions also for these issues in the agriculture sector. As I said, all these 15 issues that we have spoken about here are the questions that are repeatedly asked in our main examination. As I said, we will come to the prelims aspect of our agriculture sector when we discuss economic survey agriculture chapter. Right now we are focusing on the analytical aspects, wherein you can expect a lot of questions are being asked in our main examination from these analytical aspects. Whatever the 15 points I have given here, all those 15 points are the topics from where the questions are repeatedly asked in our Indian Economy Agriculture Paper 3. As you can see here, as and when you have any kind of doubt, you can always ask me those doubts. I can see your questions here, and then I will answer your questions also. So proceeding further, let us look at the solutions. What are solutions? As I said, the basic problem with India is this small size of land holdings. More than 89% of our farmers are what we call them as small and marginal farmers, whose land holdings, average size of land holding is less than 2 acres of land. Obviously, with such a very less amount of land, you can never introduce any kind of modern innovations and techniques to improve your productivity. On top of it, as we discussed yesterday, the productivity in our agriculture sector is very, very less. And another problem is that we don't have much of land also. Population is going up. So obviously, we cannot spare more land for agriculture sector, because we need land for industry, infrastructure, transportation, and housing, and for other purposes also. What is the solution then? We need the consolidation of land holdings. And let there be consolidation of land holdings. Let there be these small and marginal farmers come together. Let these small and marginal farmers come together and opt for what we call this farming on a large scale. And this can be in the form of what we call contract farming or corporate farming. This is one of the essential components of the farm bills that the government of India has also introduced. But to implement these reforms, contract farming or corporate farming or consolidation of land holdings, what is required is we have to change the mindset of our farmers. As we studied all the time, we have to focus on bringing about behavioral changes. We have to focus on bringing about what we call behavioral changes in our farmers. As I said, an Indian farmer is still emotionally attached. He is still emotionally attached to what we call, he is still emotionally attached to the land. Unless we bring in those behavioral changes, it is not at all possible for us to introduce these radical reforms. How to bring in those behavioral changes in our farmers? This is where the role of the government becomes very important. The agricultural extension services become very important. The officers should go to the ground level, explain to them the benefits, and also clarify all their doubts. As we discussed yesterday, again also, the basic problem is that the farmers have this apprehension that through this contract farming and through this corporate farming, they will lose ownership rights over the land. They will lose sovereignty over the land, which is not the case at all. And this is where the government has to remove the misconceptions among the farmers, because the potential is very, very huge. As I said, we are producing half of the output that China is producing, in spite of the fact that China has China produces double the amount of output, in spite of the fact that China has only 50% of the land that is under cultivation. Imagine if we also improve our productivity by at least 2-3 times, then we can have a huge amount of the land available for other purposes, also irrigation purposes, for transportation, for industrial purposes, infrastructure purposes, and housing purposes. We can release more amount of land also, and most importantly, we can realize the objective of what we call doubling farmers' income in 5 years' time. This is what our Prime Minister also has said. He said that one of the objectives of the government was to double farmers' income in 5 years' time. That is possible only by improving the productivity of our land. Improving the productivity of our agriculture is possible only with the introduction of these many techniques in the agriculture sector. Nowadays, if you happen to see today's newspaper also, Times of India has carried out a very good article on what is called digital farming, using digital solutions to improve productivity in agriculture. And this is what we have to think about, in order to improve the productivity and as well as output of our farmers. Still, as I said, average per capita output is very, very less, and there are huge amount of variations. In states like Punjab and Haryana, per capita output is very high, whereas in other states it is very, very low also. We have regional differences also. Then, proceeding further, what are the other solutions that we talk about here? We have to extend MSP to all crops, as we have discussed yesterday also. 23 plus 1 for agriculture, for sugar cane, we don't call it as MSP, we call it with some other name, right? 23 crops, 24 crops, the government announces MSP, but out of them, only for 2 crops there will be active procurement by what we call Food Corporation of India, rice and wheat. We have to change this. Changes in the cropping pattern are possible only by changing the MSP policy of the government. Let the farmers diversify. Now the problem is that most of the farmers in our country are only opting for paddy and wheat, because they are assured of MSP. For the rest of the crops, it literally depends on the markets, and farmers cannot afford that kind of uncertainty. So what the government should do is that the government must have procurement centers at the district level, at the mandal level, wherein the government has to give assurance to the farmers that they will procure whatever they have produced through these procurement centers on the basis of MSP announced by the government, so that there will be diversification also. It is important from environmental point of view also, because even in those areas where there is no sufficient rainwater, people are still opting for these water guzzling crops like wheat and rice, because of the MSP, because of which ultimately water tables are coming down drastically. The next solution, you can see it on the screen here, is you must increase public investment in agriculture. There needs to be radical changes in the agriculture policy of the government. Unfortunately, these changes are not taking place at all. So what is required is public investment in agriculture, and what the government is doing exactly opposite. The government is only opting for what we call more subsidies, and is knowing fully well that these subsidies would not benefit the desired sections of society. I'll give you an example here. MSP, minimum support price. If you go by Shantakumar committee has said that this minimum support price benefits only 6% of the farmers. And who are these farmers? Farmers for mostly what we call Punjab and Haryana. They are the ones who are benefiting out of this MSP and no one else. Only 6% of the farmers benefit out of MSP. What about remaining 94% of the farmers? And that is where the government has to look at its own policies. The government has to see, how to make sure that its policies would benefit every farmer, not only the 6% farmers. And who are those 6% farmers? They are big farmers, large farmers who make a huge amount of profits through MSP. And what about 89% of small and marginal farmers? Again, going by the reports of the government only. These small and marginal farmers are what we call them as a net buyers of food grain, not net sellers of food grain. What do you mean by that? You have 2 acres of land. Whatever the paddy that you are producing on your land will be sufficient only for your own consumption needs. And most of the time, it is not even sufficient for your own consumption needs also. Most of the time, it is not at all sufficient for your own consumption needs also. So what do you do most of the time? You buy food grains from the market only. You buy food grains only from the market. And this is exactly what we are saying now. What we are saying now here is that, average Indian farmer is a net buyer of food grains, not net seller of food grains. Obviously, he is not going to benefit, and he will not be benefiting out of this MSP. That is the reason why states like Bihar had come out of this MSP also. Right? And what is required then? What is the solution that we are talking about here? The solution is very simple. We must increase investment in agriculture. Earlier we had Planning Commission, that was replaced with Niti Aayog now. Planning Commission had conducted a survey, extensive research. And what is the essential part of that research? What were the findings? It was found out that if the government spends 100 rupees on providing subsidies to the farmers, this is very important. These are all the things that you will be writing in your journalist answers also. The survey says that if the government is spending 100 rupees on providing subsidies to the agriculture sector, farmers, out of these 100 rupees, it will benefit these farmers, especially small and marginal farmers, only by around 6 or 7 rupees. Maximum 6% or 7%. On the other hand, if the same 100 rupees is spent by the government on investment in agriculture, it will benefit farmers by 94%. That means out of every 100 rupees that the government is spending, 94 rupees will actually go into farmer pockets. And we don't have to say more about investment in agriculture. As we have discussed yesterday also, one of the unfortunate consequences from 1980s onwards was we have seen drastic decline in public investment in agriculture, both by the central government as well as the state governments. What do you mean by public investment in agriculture? As I said, investment in irrigation, investment in warehousing, investment in cold storage houses, investment in transportation, investment in extension services. This is what we call public investment in agriculture. And unfortunately, this is not there. It is said that more than 95% of tomato production in India will never reach the markets because they are lost during transition only. That is the reason why we have seen so much of the supply side bottlenecks, what we call them as supply side bottlenecks. These supply side bottlenecks are the ones that are creating inflation in our country. Again, if you happen to read today's newspapers, they are saying that the food inflation in our country at this point of time, we are witnessing again high food inflation. It is mostly because of these supply side bottlenecks. And how to overcome these supply side bottlenecks? By investing in agriculture sector. This is another solution. Next solution, as you can see it on the screen here, is we need a second or evergreen revolution. Again, please remember all these questions were asked in our examination also, in the main examination. All these questions were asked. As M.S. Swaminathan, the father of green revolution in our country, has pointed out, as he pointed out, this first green revolution had outlived its utility. And this green revolution that we have implemented in late 1960s and early 1970s had been transformed, unfortunately, into greed revolution. That is what he said. Farmers had become greedy. They wanted to produce more and earn more profits also. For this, they are using mostly, unethical practices. Those kind of practices that could cause huge amount of damage. That could cause huge amount of damage to, the land as well as their own, land as well as their own interests also in the long term. They are indiscriminately using pesticides and chemicals and fertilizers, and this ultimately is resulting in a decline in the salinity of, decline in the fertility of the soil, increasing salinity of the soil, and more importantly, people are also forced to consume contaminated food. And that is the reason why he says that the country needs second green revolution, or what he calls it as evergreen revolution. And what are we talking about this second green revolution or evergreen revolution? Here we are talking about organic farming, natural farming, where we are using very less amount of pesticides, fertilizers, chemicals, so on and so forth. And we also have to focus on developing other allied activities also. That is the reason why rainbow revolution we talk about it. Rainbow revolution. We are talking about green revolution, white revolution, blue revolution, black revolution, like that. We are talking about all these rainbow revolution, so that farmers can make agriculture a business also. That is what exactly the words that are used by M.S. Swaminathan. We have to make agriculture a business like industry. We have to convert our agriculture sector into industry. And this is what should be the objective. Make agriculture remunerative for the people, and make sure that farmers earn a good amount of income through agriculture. One of the basic problems we say is that the terms of trade for agriculture sector are very, very less even now also. If I am investing 100 rupees in agriculture sector, I might be getting 110 rupees. If I invest the same 100 rupees in industrial sector, I will be getting 140 rupees. If I invest the same 100 rupees in service sector, I will be getting 200 rupees also. And that is what we say. The terms of trade for agriculture sector, the terms of trade for agriculture sector are negative. That is the reason why what we say is that agriculture is not a favored activity for young people in our country, and that is what exactly M.S. Swaminathan also says. He says that we must make agriculture again a fashionable activity. That is what he says, right? We must make sure that agriculture becomes again favorable activity for young people in our country, right? That is what ultimately we have to do as part of a green revolution. This is what we have to do as part of green revolution, second or ever green revolution, right? Then the next important aspect that we talk about as part of reforming agriculture is micro irrigation techniques. The questions are repeatedly asked in our examination. These questions are repeatedly asked. Micro irrigation techniques. We are talking about sprinkler irrigation in place of this flood irrigation, wherein we can save a lot of water, and we can also have what is called sustainable agriculture. The government of India has come out with this National Sustainable Agriculture Policy also, wherein the emphasis is more on these micro irrigation techniques. And we also have to focus on dry land agriculture also. And then proceeding further, what are the other solutions that we are talking about here? Next solution that we are talking about here, as you can see it on the screen also, integrated farming systems. We are talking about integrated farming systems. Again, these questions were asked in our UPSC examination also. What are we talking about? This is what exactly MS Swaminathan also has spoken about. Please remember, for agriculture topic in our syllabus, what you have to remember is that you can search on the net and look at the articles written by MS Swaminathan. He is still very active also. And make sure that you are going through all those articles. What UPSC will be doing is that they will take those articles and they will be asked as questions in the examination. And that is what I want you to do. This integrated farming system is also one of the suggestions made by MS Swaminathan as part of this sustainable agriculture, wherein farmers must have other sources of income also, not only from agriculture. They can have a source of income from poultry, from dairy, from fishery, from horticulture and other sources, so that farmers are not found wanting in case of any natural disasters. And this is what we have to develop also. We have to provide training to our farmers so that they are in a position to grow these multiple crops and at the same time also diversify their production also. And that is where we talk about sustainable agriculture. For this sustainable agriculture, what is required is shifting the cropping pattern also, because if you keep on producing the same thing for a longer period of time, it can result in a situation wherein the land will be losing its productivity or fertility also. Shifting agriculture is what that is required here for sustainable agriculture. This sustainable agriculture, we are talking from two different dimensions. One is sustainable agriculture from the dimension of from the dimension of what we call from the dimension of sustainable agriculture from the dimension of ecological systems. You have to protect the ecological systems. Second, more importantly, from the dimension of farmers also. Farmers are able to sustain their livelihood. Farmers are able to earn respectable income through agriculture, so that they can also sustain their livelihood also, both from the environment point of view, from the point of view of farmers. That is where sustainable agriculture becomes important. Zero budget natural farming. Some time back in the budget as well as in economic survey, even the Prime Minister also had spoken about this zero budget natural farming, wherein the farmers can produce without using any chemicals or fertilizers or pesticides or anything else, and they are not spending a single rupee also. This is what we call it as zero budget natural farming. But this zero budget natural farming had its disadvantages also, had its problems also, because at the end of the day it is not a zero budget, because farmers still have to spend good amount of money. And we cannot be like Sri Lanka. What did Sri Lanka do? In the name of organic farming, Sri Lankan agriculture has suffered. Their output had come down, which led to the kind of crisis that we are witnessing in Sri Lanka. So we need to balance between this organic farming as well as the practical aspects of agriculture, wherein we have to ensure food security also. Right? This is another important solution that we are talking about. Next important solution, as you can see it on the screen here, is the next important solution, as you can see it here, is the one is extending credit to small and marginal farmers. Already the government is doing a very good job in providing credit to small and marginal farmers. Still, as we have discussed earlier, more than 60% of small and marginal farmers are not part of institutional credit. The basic problem here is that Indian farmers are tenants. That means they have contract farming. They would take the land from the landlords. What we have is absentee landlordism. Absentee landlordism. So the owner of the land will be somewhere in the cities, and he would give this land on a contract to these tenancy farmers. And tomorrow, if they have to take any loans or anything like that, the loan will go into the account of the owner only. And this land, the real farmer who is cultivating the land will not be able to get any credit facilities. And that is where the problem is. And this is where the governments also have to come up with solutions. And recently, Niti Aayog also has proposed what we call tenancy reforms. It has proposed tenancy reforms, wherein it has said that wherein it has said that as part of this tenancy reforms, it has said that those farmers who are cultivating the land, they should be getting all the benefits of the schemes that are introduced by the government. Once they have this, the certificates regarding the cultivation of land, they can get directly all the loans, the cheap agriculture that credit that the government provides to these farmers. This is another important solution that we are talking about, right? Then next solution that we are talking about here is food processing industries. These food processing industries become very, very important nowadays. Why? Because there is huge amount of potential in the food processing sector. As I said, this is one of those sunrise industries. One, it will benefit the farmers. Our Prime Minister's objective of doubling farmers' income in 5 years can be transformed into reality with focus on this food processing industries. You can say, take the case of mangoes, convert that mango into mango juice. You can see the value would be going up by at least 3 to 4 times, at least 4 to 5 times. And there is huge amount of demand for these products in foreign countries also. But at the same time, there are so many challenges also. We simply do not have enough food processing units in the country. And that is the reason why the question was asked in our mains examination last year also, food processing industry, the challenges and the solutions. And then another issue here is that we don't have enough cold storage houses, cold storage warehouses and storage houses. And we don't have enough of what we call contract farming and corporate farming, so that the corporates can come and invest in this food processing industries. And another thing is that we don't have this diversification of agriculture also. We must encourage the farmers to grow these crops. We must encourage our farmers to grow food crops and other crops also, so that food processing can become a reality also. And this requires active, proactive policies on the part of the government. Next, we have this National Watershed Development Program in Dryland Agriculture. As I said, only 45% of the country is irrigated. Remaining 50% depend on the monsoon for their survival. So that is the reason why the government of India in 1960s-70s itself had come up with this National Watershed Development Program. And it also focused on dryland agriculture. As part of this, the government is encouraging the farmers to expand their area of operations to have either poultry and dairy business, and then you have aquaculture also, what we call it as Blue Revolution, and then encouraging those crops which do not require much of water also. This is also part of what we call sustainable agriculture. And finally, and most importantly, of all the reforms that we have spoken about, most importantly, the government must reduce the subsidies. These subsidies are not only distorting the production processes, they are also coming in the way of what we call sustainable agriculture. We require political commitment to reduce the subsidies. As one of the reforms, recently, the government of India, as part of this Atmanirbhar Bharat initiatives, if you happen to go through them, had come out with this reform that if the state governments, please remember, most of these reforms have to be implemented by the state governments only, because agriculture is part of the state subject, so it is a power sector. So the government of India had said that the state governments will be allowed to raise their public debt by 0.5 percentage points, provided they implement power sector subsidies. And one of the important power sector reforms that the government had asked the state governments to implement is fixing meters to the motors of the farmers. At this point of time, you take the entire country, we simply don't know how much amount of power is consumed by farmers for their irrigation purposes. Simply we don't know, and that is where the problem is. We simply don't know what is the subsidy given by the government of India or the state governments for a power sector, and that is where the problem is. So as a first step, the government of India had asked the state governments to fix motors to find out the power consumption of farmers. Very, very important. Similarly, food subsidies also, as I have said, 4 lakh crores of rupees are the subsidies given, out of which only maximum 25 to 30% will go to the targeted beneficiaries. Remaining 70% is either corruption or administrative expenditure. What is the solution? The solution is very simple. As suggested by Pavan Kumar committee, ultimately we have to move towards food stamps or direct benefits transfer, cash, so that we can drastically reduce subsidies. Once we reduce subsidies, the same amount of money can be used to invest in agriculture. As we said, public investment in agriculture is what that is necessary. Right? These are all some of the solutions which are very direct, which are very simple, but which require a lot of political commitment. As we discussed just now also, we can talk about this digitalization of agriculture. Thanks to this internet, thanks to the smartphones, farmers have access to all the information about the trends in the prices of agriculture, and also they have information about the quality of their soil. We have Kisan credit card scheme is there, wherein you will find out the quality of the soil, and on the basis of that decide about what kind of fertilizers that can be used on the soil. This digitalization of agriculture is also a very important and innovative step to improve the productivity and also to increase the output, with the objective of doubling farmers' income. Right? These are all the solutions, as far as our agriculture sector is concerned. If you have any doubts, you can ask. Otherwise, we can move on from agriculture to the next topic that we will be discussing, industry. Right? We can move on from agriculture to industry. You can take your time and ask me the questions. As I said, all the schemes that are implemented in the agriculture sector, all the latest developments in agriculture sector, we will be looking at them as part of our discussion of economic survey. Right? If you have any doubts, you can ask. So, shall we proceed to industrial sector then? Industry? Okay. Then let me proceed to industry. Right. So what are we discussing here as part of industry? We'll try to find answers to some of the questions that you can see on your screen here. We'll try to find answers to some of the questions that you can see on the screen here. Why development of industrial sector is important for the overall growth and development of the country? What is the industrial policy of the government of India since independence? What is the industrial policy of the government of India since independence? What are major problems faced by Indian industry? And what are the present policies of the government of India in order to solve all these problems? Basically, you are talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat. Right? And then what should be done? What are the policies and what should be done? Again, I just said we are looking at all these things from analytical perspective, mostly from understanding the concepts. We are looking at all these things from analytical perspective, right? Then let us get into our discussion about industrial sector. Then. What are the major problems faced by Indian industry? As you can see it on the screen here, what are the major problems faced by our industry? First and foremost, very high cost of production. Very high cost of production. As we have said in some time back, ICOR in India is very high. Incremental capital output ratio in India is almost 4:1, 4.2:1. Whereas in a country like America, it is 1:1 only. That means in America, it requires 1 unit of capital to produce 1 unit of output, which is very efficient. Whereas in India, we require 4 units of capital to produce 1 unit of output. Obviously, the first and foremost problem is the cost of production is very high. And what happens when the cost of production is very high? Obviously, the prices also will be very high. When the prices are very high, your products will not be competitive in the international market. When the prices are very high, your products will not be competitive in the international market. Right? And what are other problems? Next problem is absence of skilled manpower. This we will talk about as part of the topic on unemployment also. There is huge amount of gap between what is demanded by the industry and what is being supplied by manpower, what is being supplied by people in the country. We simply don't have any skilled manpower, because of which our job market is highly distorted, wherein at the top level people are drawing huge amount of salaries, whereas at the bottom level average wages are very low. Why? Because those skilled manpower, because of the scarcity, are commanding huge amount of share in the salaries also. Because at the end of the day, it is decided by what we call the demands of it is decided by demand and supply only, and this is where the problem is. And that is the reason why we have this problem of what we call huge amount of scarcity, and we don't have the skilled manpower. The problem is because of our education system also. We'll talk about those things a little bit later. Next, another major issue faced by our industrial sector is we are facing huge amount of competition. Our industrial sector is facing huge amount of competition from neighboring countries. For example, take the case of our jute products and textile products. We are facing a lot of competition from Bangladesh, right? Similarly, all other neighboring countries also are giving us tough competition. Next, the country, you can see here in a wholesale price index, it is almost 17%, 18%. It has gone beyond sustainable levels also. Because of which, what is happening is the prices of raw material are going up. When the prices of raw material go up, what happens automatically? The cost of production also will go up. When the cost of production will go up, automatically, your products would become less competitive. Right? Another major problem faced by the our industrial sector is very high input costs. Power, petrol and diesel. they are very high in India. This is the major issue here. Why? You know, you take the case of power sector. In power sector, almost every state government follows this policy of a cross subsidization. What is this cross subsidization? Cross subsidization means you are providing subsidies to one particular sector and you are trying to recover the amount from other sector. For example, as I mentioned, our farmers are given free power by every government. As we study in capitalism, there is nothing like free. If something is given free to one person, other person will have to pay the price for it. So when the farmers are given free power, and who is paying the price? Industrial sector. For commercial purposes, the government is charging them 12 rupees, 13 rupees per unit. Obviously, what happens? The cost of production will go up. When this cost of production is going up, automatically the prices will be very high, and ultimately your products will not be competitive in the international market. In spite of all these things, we have achieved tremendous growth in our exports in the last year, more than $420 billion. But that is a different thing, and we will discuss them later also. Next, on top of it, very high taxes imposed by the union government, including customs and excise duties and GST. Since 2014 onwards, the government of India has followed these policies like providing protection to the domestic sector. As part of providing protection to the domestic sector from international competition, the government kept on increasing the customs and excise duties on imports and exports. Automatically, it has increased the cost of production. On top of it, the GST is also very high. GST is also very high. As you know, recently this Ford Motors, Henry Ford, had left their factory in Chennai. They closed their factory in Chennai, and they had invested $2 billion, not 1 or 2 rupees. $2 billion. After investing in $2 billion and after spending so much amount of time, they said that they were leaving India. Why? Because they cannot do business in India. Because of exorbitantly high tax rates. And the problem is that the government is looking at the GST. The government is looking at customs and excise duties and GST only from the perspective of revenue, how to increase their revenues. They are not looking at these things from the perspective of long-term sustainable growth. You must have seen in newspapers also. Recently, the government is planning to shift items from the 5% bracket to 8%. They wanted to remove this 5% bracket to 8%, and they wanted to also to shift maximum number of items from the 18% bracket to 28%. And it will be sounding death knell for industrial sector. Can they sustain such a very high tax rates? Obviously, not at all. And this is where the government is committing a big mistake also, because they are looking at the taxation policy only from the point of view of generating maximum revenues for the government, not from the point of view of sustaining the growth rate. You can increase your taxes also by increasing your GDP, what we call it as tax buoyancy. But it seems the government does not have the kind of patience and also the kind of strength and resources to wait for a long term. And this is where the problem is coming up. These very high taxes, what they are doing is that they are making our products less competitive. As last year we had $420 billion of exports. This year, can we expect the same? Obviously not, because of a changing global environment, and more importantly, because of the very high taxation regime that India has. This is another major issue when we talk about agriculture sector. And another major problem, this is very important. The seventh point that you can see it on the screen here. This is a major issue. Another major problem here is that failure of the government to enter into international treaties and agreements. The government for some strange reasons has opted for what we call this Make in India and Atmanirbhar Bharat. As part of it, they wanted to protect the domestic industry. We got a golden opportunity in the form of RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Treaty. But for the reasons best known to the government, the government has decided not to take this bold step and become part of RCEP. Now we are feeling the pinch, especially after this Corona crisis and after this Corona crisis induced recession. The government is right now running here and there and everywhere else also to sign as many bilateral agreements as possible, and that is where we have committed the mistake here. We have committed the mistake of not entering into international treaties and agreements. We need customs unions. We need free trade areas. We need lesser tariffs, and that is where the problem is. So I think we have reached the end of our class, and if you have any questions you can ask. Otherwise we will continue with the discussion tomorrow at the same time. We'll continue with our discussion tomorrow at the same time at 11:30. We'll continue with our discussion on industry, and then we'll proceed to other aspects like poverty, unemployment, and everything else also. Right? Till then, take care of yourself. Till then, you please take care of yourself. And tomorrow we will continue, and we will resume from where we have left today.